Welcome back, friends, to another day of Excel. Yes. Okay, we're excited. This is Excel day two. Again, just from files.learnsoftware.org, you can go to Excel and download these files by just clicking right there. So, and then it will come up in your downloads. You might need to double click to unzip it. So today we're going to be learning a lot about tables, some pivot tables, slicers, and mainly pretty much focusing a lot on these tables. So to start off, we're actually just going to open up Excel um, just by typing it in a little search bar, hit enter. It'll take a second. Okay, so we talked about kind of like a tour of these templates the other day, day one. So we'll just open up a blank one for today. Full screen that bad boy. And we're going to get started off by reviewing a bit about importing data because we do have another text file that we want to import into our blank workbook here. So, right, just on data and then get data, and we'll be using a text file, browse, and we're going to be using this data.txt in our folder for today. Get data. If you hit next, it's going to connect to it. And great. So our delimiter, like we talked about, here's a tab between all of these, and we have lots of data here. Um, One thing that we do that in day two we're going to talk about is about the Power Query Editor. So you can load into that by clicking on this button, Transform Data. And so this is your Power Query Editor. So you can see that these are our applied steps over here. And you can see that our Power Query Editor already did a couple edits for us. Basically, what it did is when it loaded in our data, sorry, from the source, it just said column one, column two, column three, right? Because it noticed that those were different columns and it just said, okay, column one, two, three. But then it noticed on its own that this row one is different from the rest, right? Like quarter one, quarter two, and then just a bunch of numbers. So it took this first row and it used it as a header. Okay, so this button up here, use first row as headers. So if we just want to redo what it had already done for us, just because it was smart, just click on that and it will take that row one and it will use it as the headers for our columns here. Just a few other things about Power Query Editor, why we might want to use it. It's very easy to see our applied steps over here on the right side. It's easy to do a lot of quick, easy edits very quickly. That maybe if you import it and load it into your workbook, it might take a bit longer. These are some quick, pretty easy edits that we can do. So some other ones that I wanted to touch on just here really quickly was the data types. So if we come into our transform tab, you can see that each of these columns has a data type here. So data type whole number. So this is automatically detecting it. Right? If you hit detect data type, that's basically what it did, but just automatically for us. And it, right, all these data types over here are all whole numbers, and then these, right, are just text. If you ever wanted to change that, you can just click right there and change that here. Um, a side note, we did talk about data formatting on day one. You can review that here. And you could also point out that some of the more custom data types, such as like a phone number for this column, you can't do that here inside of Power Query Editor. That would be inside of your actual Excel workbook. Okay, and then, so yeah, that's the data types. You can also split columns very, very easily here. There's just this split column button, and you can click on that, and we'll say, okay, what do you want to split it by? for this case, we want to split the employee name into first name, last name. So we'll just hit by delimiter. And our separator, right, will just be a space, right? Bill space MacArthur. And then just hit OK. And it will split that into two for us. Employee name 1, 2. Obviously, we don't want to name it employee name 1 or dot 1 and dot 2 or whatever it is. So if you just click on the column, there's this rename function up here. Then click on that, and I think we'll go ahead and name this employee first name. And then for this second one, employee last name. Very cool, very cool. Okay, lovely. All right, format, and then, yeah, so there's a few other things that you can do here. You can format whatever you want, such as if you wanted to capitalize each word. So say the names weren't already capitalized at the front of them, you can click on the column and then capitalize each word. You can uppercase all the letters. That might be useful, you know. You could change it like that. There's really a ton of options here. Um, and then one thing to note, how to undo in your Power Query editor. If you try Command Z, you'll see that it's just not working. It'll kind of give you that little click noise. So if you do want to undo something inside of Power Query, you say, I don't like that uppercase last name. It'll be over here in your applied steps, and you're going to hit on this X here. And that'll just undo whatever step you took there. Okay, something else that can be useful here would be maybe if you are looking at the position, right? Kind of like what department they're in, I guess. You can extract. So we'll also talk a bit about extract. There's lots of options here. You can go over more if you'd like, but I guess just the one that I'll talk about here is his first characters. So you could say, okay, I want to extract just the first couple characters because I don't need the whole name of the department, just the first, 3 or 4, so that I know basically what it is. So I'll just say like 3, and cool, like marketing, sales, production, management, inventory. So that's just one thing that you can do. I don't know if that looks great. I'll probably undo it. But extract will do those things for you there. Okay. And if you want, you can talk about some of these other options inside of Power Query Editor. But for our purposes, we'll probably just stay there. You could also talk about add column if you so desire. But once you have the data more or less how you'd like it, and it all looks clean, you can hit close and load. And Excel is going to make this into a table automatically for us. And you can see that table has its own tab up here. First thing I kind of wanted to go over with tables is just formatting, because I think formatting's fun. Um, there's a lot of different formats that you can do. You can even hit this bottom arrow facing downwards, and there's a ton of options here for you. So you can go with the light or the darker styles. I would just recommend that you try out some of these, but you will probably have time for an activity here where they can style their table however they'd like. So formatting, and then the next thing is you can name your table. So say, I don't like the name data, it's boring. So you can say employees of the USA. I don't know, something. Oh, so I can't have a space. So I'll just say employees. So you can name it there, and that will be useful later on when we're using it in formulas. Just have a nice table name there. Okay, and then, oh, also some more formatting stuff that I forgot to mention was you can use things such as banded rows. If you unselect that, you can tell what it's doing, right? It's going to select every other row and it will give it that shade, just so it's a bit easier on the eyes to distinguish from one to the other. So I usually like banded rows. If you don't like that, you can also do banded columns. First column, bolded, last column bolded. Sometimes that's nice if you have maybe your totals over here on the right, or also total row will add a row to the end of your table for you, and it will do its best to total something that it thinks you want. For this one, it totaled all the quarter fours, which isn't super useful, so I'll probably turn that off. But you could also go over some of those um, formatting options that are also there for us. Okay, and then just also a bit of review from last time with the data cleaning. There is remove duplicates here. So you could do that. And you could also ask a question if anyone remembers what remove duplicates does and what would it do if I unselected any of these here. But once you do that, you'll see most of them are duplicates, so that's fun. So almost all of our table is gone now, but it's great. There's no more duplicates. Something else that is useful for these tables here is called a slicer. So you can see right here, here's the button for Insert Slicer. If you just click on that, a slicer will be an easy way to jump through your data. Say you just had, 10, 10 columns and like 500 rows. It's going to be hard and it's going to be really tedious to just scroll through them all the time, right? So uh, say I wanted to filter it basically, or get easy access to the data from the position or department, what I like to call it. You can hit OK, and it will bring up this nice little sub-menu, you can call it. And say I just wanted to find everyone in marketing. Just click on marketing, and it will find everyone there. Say, sales. I wanted to do everyone in sales. Okay, great. And it just brings all of those up for you automatically. So super easy, and then you can also access the data, and you can do other things with it here. If you just wanted to copy and paste it, right? I just wanted to show that you can then access the data and use it to for your formulas or functions elsewhere in your Excel workbook. And then also you could go over this multi-select. Just it is what it says it is basically. You can select multiple and have those pop up instead of just one single department, right? And then if you ever just wanted to clear, right, you can come back to your main table here, and you can use that as you'd like. So then the slicer, you might have noticed that it also has its own tab up here. There are more formats right here, and you could select whatever you'd like there. I don't know what color. And then also there is, these different ways you can separate it into columns if you'd like. You could also just change the width by just um, selecting those boxes and just expanding it. But you also can get pretty exact here and format that exactly how you'd like to have those slicers to use there. Okay, so that is the slicer. Oh, also the slicer settings. Sorry, you can name your slicer, just like what it says up here, position, right? You can change your captions here. And then you could also change the sorting and the filtering for the items here. It's probably easier to see in one column. You can change that if you wanted Z to A, descending order. You can flip that. And there's just a couple more slicer settings in here. Okay. But yeah, so that's the slicer. So at this moment, and probably before, you can give the students some time to have an activity to kind of format the table how they'd like. They could even format these as phone numbers and write like BYUID. That's great. You could change this to money if you wanted, um, but that would be in the activity time, right? Here, I'll probably just go over just the basics, and you guys can add to it as you'd like. Okay, the next thing I wanted to show is these pivot tables. So first, you'll need to select pivot table, and it'll ask for what data do you want to use. So we're going to select our entire table here, and it automatically finds that, hey, this is our table employees. And then you can say, all right, where do you want to put the pivot table? You can either put it in a new worksheet, right, which will add a new sheet at the bottom here, or you can just put it in the same one, which is probably what I'll do, just because I wanted to keep it all on this one screen. Nice and easy to find. So I'll say, okay, I want it over here to the right of my table and my slicer. That's kind of right behind there. I'll just hit okay. And pivot tables are pretty useful for doing quick calculations. So slicers filters it pretty easily and it gives you the ones that you want. Pivot tables do calculations very quickly. So say I wanted to add up all the quarter ones in just one click of a button. The default setting for a pivot table is sum. It'll sum whatever quantity that you click on. So sum of quarter one, quarter two, and so on and so forth. If you wanted to change any of these, you'll just click on whatever pivot table it is, which value it is, and then you'll come up into field settings, and you could change it to average of quarter one. You can change the name if you want. I'll probably just keep it as that. And there you can find the average of quarter one for each employee. There are some other options here. You can change this guy to the max, which one was the max and min, product, and you can get into more detail with some of these. Standard deviation. You probably don't need to go too far into these, but probably at least down to product. I would do these first few and explain what those can do for you. Count, this will just count how many employees there are. So not crazy useful. But lots of fun things that you can do here with your pivot table. Also, there's a design tab. We love Excel design. So creative. Wow. Lovely. You can change how it looks. And there's, of course, tons of options for you. Maybe I'll go dark. Yeah, that looks cool. So this is another time when you can give some time to your students to mess around in the pivot tables. Um, I wouldn't worry so much about moving or the pivot charts or anything right now. The basics of pivot table is that it can do these calculations quickly for us. And another thing is insert slicer. That's just going to work the same as the slicer on our normal table does, just with this one. So you can explain that a bit if you would like, but I think for now I'll just keep to this. And then just keep in mind, right, that it's always going to do sum. So like if you try and sum this, right, row labels, then it's just going to link their name to the sum of whatever quarter they were in, and then the grand total at the bottom. But if you do something kind of silly like phone number, it's literally just going to take all of their phone numbers and sum them. So it doesn't make a ton of sense, but there's a lot of quick calculations that you can do with pivot tables. And then, yeah, just give them some activity time to format that however they'd like and use whichever formulas or calculations that they would like. Okay. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about is conditional formatting, which on your home page is this entire section right here, next to your data formats right here. So conditional formatting is great. You say, I don't know, Annie didn't do great, so we'll label it as bad. These are pretty much just, some presets that Microsoft Excel has for us if you want to just do a quick, easy cell style. You could also create your own cell style and use that however you'd like red text in a blue background or something more specific than it just has here. I'll just undo that for now though. But conditional formatting is more than that. Conditional formatting would be something like if I wanted to find which employee did the best and not have to necessarily look at numbers, but I just wanted to look at colors, then we can use conditional formatting. One that is pretty popular is color scales. So we can say, okay, this one right here will make green values the highest values here and red the lowest. If you click on that while selecting your data, right, it's going to bring up these 9,000 numbers, and the highest will be the darkest green, and the lowest are going to be red. And then in the middle will be yellow, orange, right? So that's a couple options there. Um, I'll probably just clear that, sorry. And then clear is just right here, clear rules and clear from selected cells, just so I can show you a couple others. Data bars are also pretty useful. You can see what it does here. The more or the higher the number, the more it will fill the cell with that data bar. So if you prefer that on your eyes, and if you think that looks better, you can use that. Again, I think I'm just going to clear these for now. And icon sets, for this, I wouldn't say it's super applicable for any of these ratings or indicators. But top and bottom rules are pretty useful. So say you just wanted to um, highlight the ones that are above average, you can do that here. So whichever cells or whichever numbers here are above the average of all of them, it will, let's say green. I feel like above average should be green. Okay. It's going to highlight all those above average ones in that green. No, it doesn't have to format the entire row. I think that's just how this workbook is. That some people are all over 1,000 and some people are all under 1,000, you know. So that's another conditional formatting that you can use. Um, the top and bottom, top 10% is pretty great as well. Gets you a little bit more specific and not just the averages. But anyway, that's just a few of the conditional formattings here. You can go over as many of those presets that you want along with these, just kind of whichever ones that you like and think are useful for your class. But the last thing that I will kind of touch on will be these custom rules. Just clear that. So you can click on New Rule here, and you can say lowest value. So there's two color scale, which would basically just be minimum, maximum, highest value. Some other options there for you. I think classic is pretty common here. So you can see that this is basically just the preset that we were just working with, right? Like if it's the top 10% or top 10. But we can also use format only cells that contain. So for example, I'll actually use this on the positions, we'll say. And conditional formatting, new rule, and then classic, and format only cells that contain. And you can change this from specific text to if there's a blank in there, if there's no errors. Only do this if there is an error, right? But I'll probably just go with specific text that is containing. You could also say beginning with, like beginning with an R. Um, format them all like this, or not. I'll say just containing though, and then we'll say R, for example, and then just red. And you can see how it labels those all as red there. And then you can go along and add more rules to change those to other colors there, or you can do it all in one big rule. But yeah. So yeah, those are the table styles and the conditional formatting. This is also another great time for an activity, just so that they can format it just how they would like. And then the last thing that can be useful here is if they wanted to bring these two columns back together, to just have their names right in one column. If you have time for this, you could also show them, right, just inserting another column, and you can rename it if you want. But yeah, um, I'll just be going over the concatenate function, which is super simple. It's just equals concatenate. It pops up for me here. Concatenate. And then it will ask me which text I want to combine, basically. So I want to say Bill, comma, space. Space will just be two quote marks, which is basically just saying empty space, Put an empty space in between the first and the last names. So that, comma, last name, and then it doesn't want to give me that, but it's a C2, so I can just write in C2 if I want. C2, and then add that. Oh, sorry. Sorry, yeah. So it's quotes with a space in between it. That's my bad. But that's a way to concatenate um, two columns into one if your heart so desires. I think it's important to know how to separate them and how to bring them back together if they want to do that as well. But yeah, so that is Excel Day 2. Hope you guys enjoyed. Lots of formatting, lots of tables, lots of good stuff there. But yeah, thank you, gamers, for tuning in to this podcast, a screencast. We had a good time. Hope you guys enjoyed, and have a good one. See ya.